Panel session. We have three alumni, well, two alumni, one current student who they've all gone through the Nike internship. So we kind of wanted to make this a space since the Nike internship application is due for some students coming up who are eligible. And then an information session for anyone who's interested in the future. So we can go ahead and get started. We have Jordan Westendorff, Jada Taylor, and Adam McAdoo. So my first question for you three is if each of you can go around and tell us a bit about yourself and a little about what sport you were involved in and what you are now currently doing.
I can start. I'm Jordan. I am a beach volleyball player currently. So I'm still in school. I'm a senior this year, and I'm a strategic communications major with a minor in business. So I don't really have my job situation figured out yet, but yeah, for now I'm just still in school and I still have another semester.
I can go next. I'm Jada Taylor. I was on the Equestrian team. I graduated in 2019 with a strategic communications major and a business and minor. And now I work at Outdoor Voices, an athletic wear company based in Austin, Texas. And I'm the influencer ambassador specialist. So I manage all of our ambassador, influencer, celebrity relationship, strategic initiatives as well.
Gotcha. My name is Adam McAdoo. I graduated in May of 2020, so just pretty recently with my degree in supply chain management, and I am now working for Tektronix Industries, TTI for short, as an event marketing specialist. I've got the T-shirt on. You may not recognize TTI, but they do Ryobi power tools, Milwaukee power tools, Dirt Devil, Hoover. So I pretty much am doing field sales for Ryobi as of now, and they're just a big parent company, and really excited to be here. It's great to see some familiar faces and names pop up here in the Zoom link, so I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. My next question is, could you guys kind of take us through your experience in the application process and kind of give us an outline of how that worked out?
Yeah, so I remember when I applied, it can really, just based on how Nike's going that year and like what openings or like who's hiring, like managers are hiring within the company, can really dictate when you'll hear back from a lot of people. But from what I remember, and the biggest thing that I've stressed was that initial interview, like once you submit a resume and then you have your recruiter interview, which is your first interview, that really, I would say, was probably the most crucial point because, and this is a pretty good rule of thumb for anybody seeking employment after this, is whenever you have that recruiter interview, the recruiter is pretty much almost pitching you to other hiring managers. And since Nike is such a massive company, there's really a role for whatever you're doing. Some of my closest friends were computer engineers that were helping code. I had people in procurement, sales, marketing. So there's a space for anybody. But after that initial recruiting interview, I had 3 separate manager interviews, which would have been for the specific position I had. And because I'd kept my relationship with my recruiter, as it were, she was able to patch me through to other managers that were hiring. And that's kind of like, I didn't get my actual intern role until the 3rd interview. So keeping in touch with my recruiter after our initial conversation was huge, because you might not, just because you don't get it on the first interview doesn't necessarily mean that that's it. They're going to keep finding a spot for you. So that relationship is pretty crucial.
I kind of had a similar experience when I applied. My first interview was actually with a position that had nothing to do with my major and I had no experience in. And I remember being like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to get this internship, because he was telling me like the past interns he's had. And I'm like, nothing I know anything about. So I was pretty stressed, but I was able to turn the interview and talk about my strengths. And they actually called me after and said that the interviewer said that I was able to play off what I was good at and like shown that I like had a passion and really wanted this internship. And he even said like the recruiter put me in the wrong, like she kind of placed me wrong in the first interview. So I was lucky enough that he spoke well of me and said that I interviewed well and that I deserved to move on to another position. So I definitely think throughout the whole entire process, you need to be really flexible because you don't know where you're going to end up or who you're going to be interviewing with. And then I actually ended up interviewing with the Chicago office, which I had no clue even existed until I was on the interview. And they were like, do you know this is based in Chicago? And I was like, no, but I'm ready to pack up my bags. I love Chicago, so let's go. They just are really looking for somebody who has that passion throughout the whole entire interview process. If you can prove that, you're going to increase your chances of getting a position wherever that might be, but also just being flexible because there is so many spots and your first try might not be the spot that you might end up in the end.
Yeah, for sure. To work off what Adam and Jada said, the interview process is long. It's this is a big internship. It's a big role. And I think that that's something that needs to be recognized from the very beginning. It's a tough interview process. And I think everyone kind of expects that, but I don't think you expect it to the point that it's it almost feels like rejection after you're on. I mean, for me, I think I had 5 total interviews. And my original recruiter, Charlotte, I love her still. So she was someone who was with me throughout my whole internship, not only from my very first interview, that's the first person I interviewed with, but also my last one-on-one that I had at Nike. So that, like Adam said, that recruiter relationship is huge. That first interview is huge, but I think it's also really important not to harp on what Adam and Jada said, but it's really important to make sure that you kind of stay confident throughout that whole interview process, because I think the first time that I put in an actual thing that said I actually want to do the internship was in early October, and I didn't find out that I actually got it until February, early February. So that is a really long process, and it's hard, especially when you're okay, well, I have other internship opportunities. I don't know what to do. So you kind of have to balance that. But I think that, it was so worth it. And the experience that I got from interviewing from not only the recruiters, but different managers. I actually interviewed with the Chicago office, the New York office, and the Beaverton office. So I interviewed with every single headquarters that you possibly could. So it was kind of the interview process felt like it was so long, but it really paid off in the end. And I think it's important to know prior to getting into this that it is going to be a long process, but it's extremely worth it in the long run. And the experience that I got from the interview process is one of the things that I'll take with me for the rest of my professional career.
That's awesome.
Right, and it's weird.
Oh, sorry, Adam.
Sorry.
You can go. No, you're good.
No, you're good. And I think that's something that actually future cohorts, and especially this upcoming group, y'all are going to have a bit of an advantage, because for me, for my internships that I had throughout college in the summer, they were in-person interviews, which I think is a lot easier to sell yourself, because you can, those soft skills, that firm handshake, that icon, showing that you're attentive, is really easy in person, but especially all your interviews are on the phone. They may do Zoom, I'm not sure, but since y'all have had some experience with class-wise, I was definitely something I was really nervous about, just because that's something I had never had to do before. So I think now that we've kind of all gotten a sense of this, virtual work life, I think y'all will have a little bit easier transition than I'd say I had.
Thank you for sharing, Adam. So could you guys tell us more about your specific role that you had? And for instance, Jordan, I know that you were online, and I know that that's obviously the route that they're taking right now for these next group of possible applicants. So if you guys could kind of talk about being online and being in person and your role and your experience there.
Yeah, so I was the North American communications intern, and I did not find out that we were online until I think 2 months after I found out that I actually got the internship position. I was supposed to be in Beaverton at the headquarters. So it was definitely kind of a nerve-wracking experience for me, especially because we were online for school, and that was 1 month of us being online. So it was still kind of weird, still kind of new. And I was how do you even start from scratch online? That was not a thing. So that was definitely something that was like really, I was like, how is this even gonna work? But I actually did my whole internship from this room in Fort Worth. So I think that it was definitely probably an experience that I will like forever remember, but also an experience that is so helpful because I think that no matter COVID or not, I think that this is something that's going to change our like professional careers for the rest of our lives. I think that um, through this time that they like, especially huge companies like Nike. So I can't imagine how like smaller companies are feeling. It is so much easier and so much more productive for people to be able to work at kind of like wherever they need to be at that point in time. Like there's no longer an excuse, oh yeah, like I'm here, but no, now you can work from your house. So it's like, it's definitely something that was really new. And my manager was super supportive. Like when you have, when you're on Zoom for a whole internship the whole summer, like you can't expect that there's nothing that's going to go wrong because obviously I was staring at a computer screen on video conference calls from about like 9:30 a.m. all the way till probably 6 at night. But they did like such an awesome job for me. Like we would do like walk and talks and it is a very like active company to work for. And I know like Adam and Jada will probably say the same from just like their experiences, even being on campus or at whatever headquarters they were at. But they kind of really push, they want to see their employees be active and that's probably the last thing that they want is them sitting in a room all day. So I mean, I would do walk and talks probably for like 4 hours out of my 8 hours, but that was definitely after those like 3 weeks of actually having that kind of brutal, it was honestly like brutal having to sit on Zoom from 10 to whatever time because you had to make that relationship like via Zoom. So like kind of that face to face, like really getting to know people face to face and then kind of transitioning into that like where we can walk and talk on the phone rather than actually having to be on Zoom. But definitely for the first, like, I think it was for the first 3 weeks, like every meeting that I had was on Zoom. And I think if the internship is kind of going into that, like going that way, I think that that's going to be something that is probably not going to change because they do still want, like, if you were to see someone out and about, they still want you to recognize that person and know kind of who you're talking to. So I think that those face-to-face relationships that I unfortunately had to build like over or electronically, I think those are still really important and those are something that are going to pay off in the long run. But yeah, it was still an awesome experience for me.
Yeah, and then I was based in the Chicago office and I was the brand experience intern, which is basically Nike's digital marketing department. So I touched every single brand between like basketball, running, Nike women football, photo shoots, ran the Chicago social content, just doing all of that. And then the social activations for any in real life activations, which is pretty awesome. We built a basketball hub at a church, an abandoned church in Chicago, and had kids come all summer. We had like just like awesome in-person activations and experiences, which obviously this summer the interns won't be able to take part of, or I guess Nike in general. So seeing that whole shift will be really interesting. But just like Jordan said, I actually feel like y'all have an advantage, like learning from this digital age, because a lot of companies are going to shift this way. And it also kind of opens you up. Like I'm work from home now, probably till the end of 2020, like probably going into 2021. But it opens up opportunity for you to meet people who you might have not sat close to or been able to like grab a minute of their time. But now you can talk to them on Zoom and you're able to connect in a different way. And it can actually really help you get a leg up for future career opportunities as well. So it's actually, even though it might not seem exciting, it actually is pretty exciting to be in this like digital age with more access to everyone.
Yeah, Ben. So I used to joke and say I had the longest job title out of anybody at Nike. I was a brand design creative operations intern, which is a really fancy way to just say I did supply chain work for the marketing department. It was kind of, and that's one of Nike's like biggest strength, I would say, is like their marketing team, because like Nike ads just always they just hit home, and it's almost impossible to forget them. And so it was my team's job to make those as efficiently as possible and also under budget. So there was definitely I got to sit in the marketing, like global brand marketing, which was an amazing experience. Like all the ads that I got to see and all the behind the scenes content that, you know, I can actually say that I've seen some things that never made it like to the air because they have to plan so far ahead. Like, I mean, they were planning for the Olympics when I was there, and they had already been doing that for about a year. So they planned just super far ahead. And so to get to see how that works and that process and then try to optimize it was essentially what I helped to do. So I got to work similar to like Jada mentioned across pretty much every category, find out their processes and try to utilize that. And like my biggest project was making one quote source of truth, kind of like operational system for them. So it was nice. It was more of the information system side of the supply chain major, which I had. I had initially interviewed for a sales role and then also a procurement role. But no, definitely just kind of like Jada and Jordan are saying, it was definitely something I hadn't worked in before. And it was a lot of things that I had to learn on the fly, but the people that I got to work with were extremely helpful. And that's really, this internship is about the actual experience. It's not necessary. And that's what they told me on my first day is Nike is so massive. They're like, we don't want to burst your bubble, but this is not a problem that an intern is going to be able to fix. And after 3 weeks of sitting in on meetings, I was like, yeah, this is way above my pay grade. Anything I can do to help out, please let me know. But like, they didn't expect me to solve everybody's problems. I was just there to help. It was that whole internship for me, at least, was about meeting people, getting to see how teams work, seeing a little bit of insight into a company, and just every experience I could get. You know, they say be a sponge. That was something that you heard a pretty good amount. Soak up everything, because it's not necessarily going to be about, you know, whatever your project is. It's going to be the people you meet and the experiences you have across any role.
So kind of going off of that, what was your guys' biggest takeaway from your experience at Nike, if you could pick one?
So for a little bit about me, I was born and raised in Fort Worth, Texas. Both my parents went to TCU. Both my grandparents on my father's side went to TCU. So I've pretty much never left the TCU area, and I'm still working in Fort Worth because I love it so much. But I looked at the Nike internship almost as like a study abroad because I personally, for my own professional and personal development, I felt that I needed to experience something different. I wanted to be thrown out into the middle of the deep end and learn how to swim, because it felt like I had been in the shallow end my entire life. It's not to say don't love where you came from, but something a former boss of mine told me. He said, the way that the company I worked at did business in New York City is different from Fort Worth, Texas. And so I knew that I needed to learn how to be comfortable in a foreign environment, in which, for me, being a Fort Worth native, I had never lived outside the city. I wanted to live someplace that was different. And so being comfortable with being uncomfortable was essentially my motto. And it was funny, the first day of the internship, they said that should be our motto too. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm onto something. But if you can, I guess, you can thrive, not just survive in an environment that is something that you've never done before, then that's going to be the true test of where you'll go professionally. Don't be afraid to try new things, meet new people, and take on a project you may not know necessarily how to do, because that's where actual growth is going to come.
Oh, so Jada, you
can go ahead.
Oh, are you sure? Okay. Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing that I learned was like the biggest takeaway was the importance of connections. And this is something that my personal boss like drilled into me. So you basically have like a manager that you report to, and you kind of have like a one-on-one with every single day, and they're kind of like guiding you through the whole internship. And my manager told me, she was like, from my first week, like I already had one-on-one set up with everyone on the North American brand team, which was like huge for me. And actually like the job that I got offered for this summer, or for like after school, was not even from my manager. It was from someone that I met in one of those one-on-ones. So that I think the biggest thing is really kind of going out of your comfort zone. And for me, it was really awkward to meet people for the first time one-on-one via Zoom. Like it's really weird, like not really having that like one-on-one, like face-to-face like experience. But I think that that's something that is like super important. And I learned that, not like I thought I knew that going into the internship, but I never would have gone out of my way to actually like kind of put those meetings on the calendar. And like that's a big step when you're like, okay, well, I'm meeting with the head of North American brand. Like this is our like kind of like our whole boss, and I'm putting this meeting on his calendar, and I'm having to like really like type this email and say like why I'm wanting to meet with him and like what I want to talk about. And like that's something that's really nerve-wracking, especially when you're like in Nike. That's something that is like so normal. Like you can really just put like I was like, I can't believe that I'm like talking to this person and that he's actually like spending his time like, and things are really busy. So like the fact that he like gave like his 30 minutes to just like speak with me was like huge. And I think that's something that I like learned. And definitely even like typing those emails, like that was probably the biggest takeaway that I took, because it's like something that it's like, okay, how do I send an email to this guy saying that I want to speak to him about my professional development when he probably doesn't care? Or but like they like the people there like truly do care, and they like truly like want like the best for the interns, and they truly do like put a ton of investment in them. So I think that's the biggest takeaway that I had, just kind of like making sure that I did make those connections. And for my first week, all my one-on-ones were set up. And after that first week, my manager was like, okay, these are the people that you need to schedule one-on-ones with this week. And this is like, let me know if you need help with your email, but this is how it's going to go. And these are the people that you need to meet with this week. And I was like, got it. Okay. And then she kind of guided me through that process, but that was really nerve-wracking. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I took from the internship.
I think for me, my biggest takeaway is to go after every experience and opportunity available for you there, to truly allow the experience to tell you like what you want to do in your future. Like for me, I was in the brand experience side, so a lot of social, and I found out that was like my first like social media type of internship or opportunity. And through that, I realized that I love like the social influencer space, but I realized that I wanted to work for a brand or a company that I truly resonated with. So the different experiences I had, like I remember working on Nike basketball content, and I'd be like literally sitting next to like amazing experiences, like sitting next to KD, and we're talking about like what video he's going to take for us to post on Instagram. And I'd be like, this is so awesome. This is so amazing. But then the next week I'd be working on like Nike women's, and I'd be like, wow, actually, like I resonate with this audience more because I don't know anything about basketball. But I resonate more with this audience. And I was like, I feel like I'm marketing to myself. And I felt like I could truly put my like all my thoughts and like everything and like really like all my like power behind that, because I truly resonated. So it actually like led me to find my current job, because I realized like that's the space that I wanted to be in. So kind of like gave me those experiences, like helped mold like what I actually wanted to do. And I'd say second biggest takeaway is network there. You never know who you're going to meet or who you're going to run into. Like when I was in Chicago, we had like a random, not a random, it's actually like a company-wide event, but I met someone in the Dallas office, and they called me up one day when I was back in school, and they're like, hey, we're doing this activation. They said that they want you to work on it. And I ended up coming back as a contractor during my senior year, and did some really awesome projects with the Dallas Cowboys and Nike Women. So that was like just like someone that I met and connected with and networked with. They remembered me, found me on LinkedIn, called me up. And like beyond that, people that I worked with my position at Nike, like I still work with in my day-to-day job now, like different influencers that I've met in the community. And it's really awesome to be able to take like past experiences and be like, oh, this person, they do this with like kids here and we're doing this. And I think that we should bring them in as a partner, and like building that network, it never ends. I know that's like what they tell you at TCU all the time is like network. It's all about like connections, like don't forget, but really like don't like respond to those LinkedIn messages, like make sure you're really taking advantage of every opportunity.
So I have two more questions for you all. One of them is, what do you know now that you wish you knew prior to this internship?
I think
can-
sorry.
Go ahead, Jordan. I keep
I think
saying
the
this.
biggest thing for me is confidence. I mean, I think when you're going into such a large role and it's so intimidating working for such a large company, I think that it is so important to realize that they chose you for a reason and that you had to make it through that long interview process for a reason. Especially in the first couple of weeks, it's a lot, and it's kind of my second week, I had a release of a Tiger Woods shoe, and I was on a Zoom call with him, and I had to kind of brief him about the media that was going to be on the Zoom call in the next 30 minutes, and I had to tell him what questions they were going to ask, kind of give him guidance, and that was just me and him on that call, kind of building that relationship and making sure that he knew what was going to happen and what was going to be said. And that's a huge, for me, I was freaking out before that. I was oh my gosh, they chose me to do this. Are you kidding? But I think going through it, and I had multiple of those experiences throughout the internship with kind of huge name athletes. And that's something that's so important to realize. They wouldn't give you this opportunity or this experience if they didn't think that you could do it. And they didn't think that you would be best fit for that kind of position. And they're kind of throwing you into like Adam said, throwing you into the deep side of the pool and expecting you to swim. And after the first one, I was dang, these people are awesome. And they truly do, they're completely open to yeah, there's a couple times that you might mess up, but there are everything's a learning experience. And it's super important to pay attention to the fact that you're there for a reason, and just have that confidence throughout the whole internship, especially with such a large company, because a lot of people were kind of drowned out by that, and they weren't able to kind of step up to the plate when their managers ask them, hey, do you think you can do this? And if your manager doesn't think you're confident whenever they ask you that question, they're not going to put you on that big of a job. They're just going to kind of say, okay, well, you can do this instead. And they'll do it themselves. So I think that it's really, really important to recognize that you are there, and to really take advantage of that whole experience and have that confidence throughout the whole internship process.
I think personally for me, I would have taken advantage of more of the opportunities that they offered for all the interns. Since I wasn't on the main campus, it was a little bit harder to get plugged into the coffee chats or some of the experiences that they would host, and they would try to put it on digitally for us, but we we're not going to sit on a Zoom call. Well, I don't even think they even had Zoom back then, but we were I'm not going to sit here and do this. We're in Chicago, we're doing something else. And looking back, me and my other interns that were there, I'm sure we would have wanted to have those experiences and maybe get us all together. We're all going to go to this together, sit down with our computers and watch this together. I feel we did get caught up a little bit in our own kind of life office in there. And so I think we missed out on a few opportunities, but I think now with this digital shift, everything's a lot more accessible before. So that's really awesome that everyone's going to be able to take part in everything easier.
Yeah, but I would just piggyback off of that. Take full advantage of everything they give to you. I think for the first probably month, I could have been well, this is going to sound weird. I don't obviously take your job seriously and work your hardest and prove that you're the best because you come from TCU and that's all that ever comes out of this school. But every Thursday is cocktail hour on Ronaldo Field, and sometimes I would be a little nervous because it would feel weird, I'm at work and my brain I wasn't used to people telling me oh yeah, you are the best of the best and you are here to rock it, and I'm oh wow, I've never heard that before. And then they're saying oh yeah, go have go hang out on Ronaldo Field, they got food, drinks, games, stuff like that. So I probably would have given myself a little bit of slack just to enjoy some of the social aspect, because really, and I eventually kind of, I wanted to put it weirdly, lightened up a little bit, because it's really the people you meet and the experiences you have are going to really lead to your development in the long run. And then I would also say I slept through the water rafting trip because I missed my alarm. So I would definitely tell myself not to do that because that was probably my biggest regret. So just everything they toss at you, don't be afraid to, even if it doesn't feel like it's work. They definitely do a lot more for you personally, and which I really liked about Nike is they stress personal development along with professional. And personal development is, having those one-on-ones, meeting people, social experiences, interactions, stuff like that.
That's really great to hear. One last question for you guys. What advice do you have for the student athletes who have applied or are thinking about or interested in applying to the Nike Summer Internship eventually?
I feel like one piece of advice that I wish I would have had when I was a student athlete is definitely put in the work to do the research for the position that you're doing, in the sense of, I know student athletes typically don't have time to do a lot of internships or have that prior work experience. So putting in that work beforehand to figure out the skills that they're looking for and see how you fit those skills in ways that others might fill in like past work experiences. But how did you show that skill like on your team? Like, what experiences do you have that you can take? Because that's one thing Nike does so well, is they don't hold it against you that you haven't had 20 internships or you couldn't have a part-time job. They truly want you to take like the experiences that you've had on like the field and apply it to work. And like, I think that's something that they do so well as a business. And like, that's why they're able to build like these awesome teams of like people who work there. It's because they have that student athlete mentality or that athlete mentality, and they really just like really take those experiences. And I know you might think like, oh, like me being on this team and like going to workouts, like that's not really like helping me, but actually it shows like your dedication and like just all those experiences, you can turn it in a way that's going to make you stand out against like other people applying for the same internship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Never like, I mean, really, even after I had the internship, when I applied to my full-time role, I still had student athlete at the top of my experience, because any employer that sees that you're an athlete knows that you're a team player, knows that you can manage your time, and knows that you can work hard. And that's at the end of the day going to get you hired. My biggest advice is to really stay in touch with your recruiter, I would say. And you just got to be patient. It is, I feel like we've done a good job of scaring y'all into it, but I mean, it really is a long, grueling interview process. And I can honestly say that I have never worked harder to get that. But if you put in the time, like I research company culture, there's a book called Shoe Dog that Phil Knight wrote that basically is him explaining how Nike came to be. And if you can read that, it's going to give you a great insight as to why Nike is the way that it is. And it'll also blow anybody away if you can talk about that company culture. And it's just going to show that you're invested. So if you truly put in the time and the effort and just the work throughout that interview process, it's going to pay off. And even after that initial recruiter interview, don't be afraid to reach out. Like, I mean, I took I really, really wanted this internship. And so, I took a part-time, like virtual internship halfway through the second semester because I was nervous. I was like, oh, I'm not going to get it. I need to beef up my resume. And I was all over the place. But I kept following up about every month or so if it felt like I hadn't heard a lot. Obviously don't spam them, but don't be afraid to reach out to your recruiter because they're going to be like, I had Charlotte too, and she rocked and she really helped me through that process.
Yeah, I think piggybacking off of both of what they said, and then also just throughout the interview process, make sure that you show them that you truly do want to be at Nike. I think I never got the same question throughout all of my interviews, but the one question that I did get that was the same throughout everyone was, why do you want to be at Nike? And I think that's something that shows like the importance as people that work there. Like you can tell on a day-to-day basis, like they commit their lives to Nike. Like they truly believe in the values that Nike supports. Like they truly do want to be there. There's not one person that I worked with that it was like, oh yeah, I'm so tired today. Like everyone was so like pumped up to be in meetings and so excited to be there and like so passionate in the work that they did. And And I think that that's something that comes along with working with a company like Nike that does have like such strong core values, and those are communicated internally like very strongly. Like we have tons of like internal, like with employees, like you can tons of just things that you can get involved in. And I think that that's something that comes along with working with a company like Nike, but truly showing like why you want to be there and what values that you have in your personal life that align with Nike's values, I think is one of like the most selling things that you could do. Just show like that you truly do want to be there, because those are the type of people that they want.
Well, thank you guys so much for sharing with us. I know we all really appreciate it. And before we wrap it up, I just wanted to open the floor to any questions or any comments that anyone has for the panel. If no one has any questions, then I just want to say thank you, Adam, Jordan, and Jada, for taking the time to meet with all of us and taking us through your experience at Nike. I know we all really appreciate your time. And thank you to everyone who joined this session. This is, I think, really great information for everyone to have, especially if they're interested in interning in the future or right around the corner. So we want to thank you so much for your time, and thank you guys so much for joining the session. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having us. And feel free if anybody wants my information or wants to catch up one-on-one, ask any more questions. If you're thinking of anything, feel free to toss that out to anybody. Pretty much like phone, email, I'm good with whatever. So anything else I can do for y'all.
Same here, and good luck to everyone applying.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Have a great night.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
No problems.